Besties, welcome or welcome back. We're trying a different style reading vlog this week. I'm going to have my TBR jar pick my reads for me for this week. This is the first week of Battle-a-thon. That means my TBR for August is mostly 5-star predictions. I don't know why I find these books so intimidating, but I do. It's the reason why I've been putting off some of these books for literally almost a year. I think it's because the expectation of them is so high. It just makes me even more nervous to finally pick them up because, like, what if I don't like them? Why is that like the scariest thought to me? I don't know. So I need the element of choice taken out of the mix for me. I need it to be randomized. I need it to be through this TBR jar. We're also just going to pick one book at a time and see where the week takes us. I think the one book that I'm most nervous to pull out of this jar, and I'm really hoping that we don't pick it for this week, is Day of Fallen Night, because even though I know I'm going to love this book, she is so chunky, and I'm hoping that we can just like ease into the month of August reading.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Here she is. There's 2 different colors in here, not for any purpose other than I just wanted them to be different colors. Let's pull out our first book for the week. Tell me why I'm literally so nervous right now. Okay. We picked An Education in Malice. I do have the audiobook for this one. It was a hold on Libby. I stocked up my Libby holds and audiobook holds for this month. So that's actually a really easy and nice way to start the month with an audiobook. So we will get started on her and I will check in once we have a reading update. I'm now at 43% into Education in Malice. This book reads so quickly. I have read A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson, so this is the second book that I've read by this author, and I'm having a fabulous time. I was a little bit worried going into it because I know that this book wasn't as well received as A Dowry of Blood. I can't understand why at this point. I've been waiting for like the other shoe to drop to figure out why people haven't been liking this as much as A Dowry of Blood. I'm obsessed with it. So the premise of the story, we are at a prestigious preparatory school? No, we're at a prestigious college that's in Massachusetts. It's secluded. It's in like Western Massachusetts. It's nowhere near Boston or any big cities or anything. They're pretty much in the woods. It's atmospheric. It's very fall. They talk about the leaves changing. Right now, we are at a Halloween party in October and it's creepy and it's amazing. So our 2 main characters that we're following are quite different from each other. We have Laura, who is a small town girl who grew up in the South somewhere. I want to say Mississippi. And then we have Camilla, who grew up in Europe, very well off. And she came over because she heard about this specific literary program slash poetry program that she almost forced her way into, like elbowed her way right in. Laura got chosen specifically for this program. She was sending her work to the professor who led this poetry slash literary program and was accepted in. Camilla and Laura are academic rivals, which is incredible. They're at the core of their personalities very, very different people from each other. There is an element of vampirism to this story. There's an element of enemies to lovers. It's giving sapphic. It's giving corruption trope. There is an inappropriate relationship with their literary teacher, with their poetry teacher, who is also a woman. Like, I'm kind of obsessed with it. I love the contrast between our 2 main girly pops. I'm loving the audiobook, but I don't think that the narrator is doing like an amazing job. For Camilla, she's making her sound like Anna Delvey. And then the narrator is also doing a very weird and not fabulous Southern accent for Laura. So like on both fronts, she should have just not done an accent for either of them, and I think it would have come out better. These girls are extremely competitive in this writing atmosphere, and it's almost as though these are the only two girls, Camilla and Laura, that are really good at poetry, and they're the only two that matter in this class. And the professor is, it seems like, turned on and instigating this rivalry between the two girls. She was already in a relationship with Camilla, and now she's like attracted to how good these girls are at writing and at poetry, that she seems like she's attracted and coming on to Laura. I wanted to give that summary and like first initial thoughts. This is a really short book as well, so I know I'm almost halfway through the book with my first update, but I'm just devouring it. So there's that. I will check in maybe once we finished, maybe a little bit sooner. We have finished An Education in Malice. I ended up going through people's reviews for that book because I was like, why does this have a 3.91 average rating on Goodreads? And a lot of people's reviews I found interesting. They said that they weren't super connected to the characters, and they found the characters not likable. For me, I don't have to like a character. I feel like An Education in Malice, if you are a lit fic girly where you don't have to like a character to like a story, you can be a fly on the wall for a really interesting scenario with realistic characters that have significant character flaws, I think that you will love this book. The fact that we had a sapphic academic rivals, they were obsessed with poetry, and they would come to poetry class and write poems about their wanton angst for each other and how their rivalry like turned each other on. Beautiful. I lived for it. My only critique, so I gave this 4 stars as you would have seen because we marked it on Goodreads as finished together. My only critique of this book is it didn't seem like there was significant character arcs. So from the beginning, when we meet these characters, to the end, even though they've been through a lot together in a school year, we have a character whose life completely changed. How, I will not share because no spoilers, but her life completely changed, and yet they seemed like the same people from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. And given this book was not long at all, we had 350 pages. You don't have a lot of time to do a lot with the characters, but they just felt unchanged when I think that realistically they would have had to cope a little bit more with the situations that were happening to them. It's almost like it emotionally didn't faze them, and they were like, perfect, we're gonna keep hooking up. Maybe they were just so in love that nothing else mattered. That could have been the case. But anyways, really enjoyed it. I think that S.T. Gibson writes very interesting stories. I love that she takes it to the level of weirdness that I want from her books. Not to say that this was overly weird, even though I do think that this book was a perfect mix between Bunny, and it doesn't get like super extremist weird like Bunny does, and almost nonsensical. There's definitely a straightforward plot. She's not pulling a Mona Awad on us, but it's like a mix between Bunny with the atmosphere and that level of artisticness to our main characters and like the sapphicness that's going on. So Bunny and Sirens and Muses, which is a lit fic. Y'all have probably seen this cover before because this cover is beautiful. This is also sapphic, and it's about 2 artists that go to art school, and it's that same like complex relationship of they're sort of rivals, but they also pull inspiration from each other, and they're also like turned on by each other, and they find each other beautiful for like different reasons. It's a very just complex relationship. It was very reminiscent of this for me. Let us pick our next book. I feel like this method of picking one book at a time is also really working for my brain, so please do not give me Day of Fallen Night. I'm still not ready for it. Okay. a sick joke, like really and truly. We have picked A Day of Fallen Night. So we're gonna start it because the TBR jar told us to. I might pick a second book to read alongside this one because this is chunky and the expectation is not for me to finish this book in this vlog, but I will try to read a good portion. Let's pick a second book just to have something to switch back and forth between. Okay, I just put in the hold for the audiobook for this one. Okay, second book. Hopefully this next book is going to be one that I have an audiobook for. Let's do this one. The Girl with All the Gifts. I think it's a horror book, and I think it's about like a zombie girl. I saw Allison Pages read it a really long time ago, and the way that she talked about it, I think she gave it 5 stars. If not, she gave it a really high rating, and she doesn't rate books, but she talked really fondly about it. Dystopia, zombies, post-apocalyptic, sci-fi, which I've been trying to get into sci-fi a little bit more, and it's categorized as sort of a thriller as well. Melanie is a very special girl. Dr. Caldwell calls her our little genius. Every morning, Melanie waits in her cell to be collected for class. When they come for her, Sergeant Parks keeps his gun pointing at her while 2 of his people strap her into the wheelchair. She thinks they don't like her. She jokes that she won't bite, but they don't laugh. Melanie loves school. She loves learning about spelling and sums and the world outside the classroom and children's cells. She tells her favorite teacher all the things she'll do when she grows up. Melanie doesn't know why this makes Miss Justino look sad. The Girl with All the Gifts is a sensational thriller, perfect for fans of Stephen King, Justin Cronin, and Neil Gaiman. We're 25% of the way through The Girl with All the Gifts. I am so gagged by this book. I was not expecting it to grip me from the first page, and it hasn't let me out of this chokehold yet. I'm obsessed with it. Even though zombies are like the biggest fear of mine in the whole world. Like truly, I got nightmares watching The Walking Dead. I hate zombies. I think that they are the scariest monster in my opinion. I don't know. They run you down and they eat you. Like, does it get scarier than that? Literally no. But the fact that we're getting this book from the perspective of a zombie is crazy. Like, it's so crazy. It's not in first person in her perspective, but we do flip between like a Melanie chapter. We get a perspective from one of her teachers. We get a perspective from the army sergeant that's running like the base where they're located to perform these scientific studies on zombie children. We get the perspective of the main doctor that's running the whole like study program. So I'm falling into the one more chapter trap at night. Last night I was supposed to go to bed at 11. I stayed up until midnight. It's not overly suspenseful. Like, it's actually more slow paced for a horror thriller than I thought, but the intrigue is there that just keeps you at the edge of your seat. Like, there's literally a chapter about dissecting a brain. Usually not my vibe. I was so invested, like I literally didn't care, I couldn't put it down. Similar to The Last of Us, the doctor that's running this study, basically, this study on this army base, is treating them as though they aren't human. And so she's treating them like test experiments, like you would rats in a cage. So that's interesting because these are people, but they're infected with this fungus. It's questionable morality. Like, it's questionable if this doctor really has a conscience because she's performing these experiments on conscious beings, but her justification is they aren't actually people with feelings, thoughts, emotions. It's a fungus that I'm experimenting on. Very questionable. We're like towing a lot of different lines. There's a teacher who kind of sees these children as children. And everyone is like, you can't do that to yourself. You can't do that in your brain, because if they had the chance, if we didn't have these protections in place, if you don't follow protocol, they're gonna eat you. What I'm really loving about this author's writing style, he writes with a lot of personification. So he'll talk about, they have these like obviously protections. They have this big fence around the army base. There's a very suspenseful, crazy moment that I'm right in the middle of at the 25% mark, where he talks about how the concrete pillars that hold up the fence drunkenly sway, as one example. But he uses a lot of personification in his writing, but he's also personifying zombies. He's personifying these monsters that, again, we always see as just like mindless, only craving one thing, which is eating people, and he's giving them personality. I hope that the AC isn't too loud. Actually, let me shut it off. Okay, I have just made lunch. I've been in a very Caesar salad with chicken type of mood, and we have a diet soda with lime. I did get to the halfway point in The Girl with All the Gifts. I don't want to do an update quite yet because I don't have anything additional to add on to my last update. I'm still absolutely devouring it. The difficult thing about this book is I don't want to read it at night because I get so scared that I like don't want to go to sleep. I'm afraid that I'm gonna have zombie dreams, but I don't want to stop reading it. Like, I keep falling into the one more chapter trap with this book, which I know I said last time as well. So it's wonderful, it's great. It's very suspenseful. Like, you're just scared for our characters at this point, and you have no idea what's gonna happen. So that has been really fun. I spent the morning this morning cleaning the entire apartment because it really needed it. Our floors were disgusting, and I was putting off mopping because it's such like a workout. Like, I literally get so sweaty. So we put on the Gilmore Girls soundtrack. We made ourselves feel like the main character, doing a cleaning montage. Highly recommend doing that. I'm just so ready for autumn at this point that the fact that it's still over 100 degrees out every day is draining my soul. We have yet to start A Day of Fallen Night because I am just scared. I also don't know if my brain can handle it, but I just keep thinking about how wonderful Priory of the Orange Tree was to read, and so it's like giving me hope. It's giving me motivation to get started. So I'm going to put a very easy goal for myself of hitting 50 pages. My goal is to just read the first 50 pages, see how I feel. So there's that. A lot about the people who get to pick out soundtracks for movies and like how cool of a job that is. If there were a job to create soundtracks for specific scenes in books, I would want that to be my job. I don't know if I'm any good at it, but I like to do it. This morning I posted an annotation post about a Ninth House scene because I'm still obsessed with Ninth House, and I always will be, because Darlington is my number one. And it's the scene, if you've read it, where they're in the basement, they're like at the party, and Darlington gets drugged by the people that he's supposed to be monitoring, and he's like giving into his feelings and desire for Alex, and Alex is like, what the heck is wrong with you? Knock it off, like come out of it. And he's like kneeling at her feet. And I just feel like Forever by the Veronicas like encapsulates that moment. I digress. We just got ready for the day. We have our first 5-star of Battle-a-thon. I finished The Girl with All the Gifts last night, gave it 5 stars. Do you ever just finish a book and you just sit there and you're just like, that book was so good? Like, that's my review. This book
was so good.
It was so good. It was so good. I wouldn't change a thing about it. It was so good. That's my analysis. That's my review. Like, that's all I can think, because I so thoroughly enjoyed that book. If I had the time in the last couple days to just read that book in one sitting, I would have. The fact that I wasn't able to do that, like every time I put the book down, I got annoyed. I was like in a bad mood, because I was like, all I want to be doing is reading this book until I finish it to completion. And then, you know what? I would reread it again, like right now. I would reread it for a second time right after finishing it. It was so good. I think that if you, and I know I mentioned this a couple times, but if you liked the story and the plot line of The Last of Us, which was a show, but it was also a video game, you should read this book. It's a very, very similar premise, and it does get sci-fi-y at times. I know I mentioned that there was a chapter that was detailing all about like brain dissection and like brain surgery, but not even brain surgery, the removal of a brain from someone's head and cutting it up and dissecting it. So like truly, it definitely gets into the sci-fi parts. There's a doctor perspective who's leading this testing, because they're trying to test these unique subjects to see if they can potentially find a cure. Even through those moments that were probably a little bit drier, like none of this book was dry for me. I loved it. I need to read more from this author like immediately. I'm scared because like this book is probably one of my favorites of the year that I've read so far, like so easily, hands down. I can say that with my full chest. One of my favorite books that I've read this year, if not my favorite. That's how I'm feeling right now. I want to read more from him, but now I'm just scared that nothing else that he writes is going to be even remotely close to this book. So I'm gonna wait before I read anything else by him. Such an unexpected 5-star as well. I had no idea what to expect going into that book. It was not that. And the ending, oh my gosh. So anyways, I will stop gushing about The Girl with All the Gifts now. I am going to order a physical copy of that book because I rented this one from my library and I need it. I think when the physical book comes in, I'm going to reread it. Like right away. I think I showed y'all yesterday, the reading gods blessed me yesterday. They said, okay, we will cut you a break and we are going to deliver your audiobook because we know that we're a little rough on you right now. So thankfully I got the audiobook for A Day of Fallen Night. That is what we will be focusing on today. Hi besties, same day, different shirt. I have an Amazon return that I have to do at Kohl's, and my Kohl's has a Sephora, so I figured we could go and see what's what. I need to get a different mascara because my tried and true, I use Lash Paradise. I love it. I love the way it makes my lashes look, but it like smudges on my under eyes throughout the day. So if I'm not conscious about it, I literally look like a raccoon because it's just like transferring onto my face, which isn't a vibe. So I'm gonna try to find a different mascara. So I potentially might get a clear mascara and see how that works, but we're gonna go take a look. So I just figured if we're going on an adventure, why not bring my besties? very quick check-in. I have been a good nugget and I have been reading Day of Fallen Night. I am currently 60 pages in. I was reading on Mel's sprints that she hosted earlier, which was great because I needed accountability to be able to start this and get more sucked in. I feel like with high fantasies such as this, it's important for me to sit down and read a good chunk of it at a time. I want to get through all of the character perspectives at least twice before I put this down for the day, because then I'll feel like it's much less intimidating. I know what I'm getting into. I know the characters. I know vaguely where they are in the world, and that will set me up really well to continue feeling good about this, if that makes sense. Hold up this instead because this doesn't weigh a million pounds. I feel like Samantha Shannon has beautifully written characters. Like these worlds that was in Priory and A Day of Fallen Night, they're so expansive. You have so many different characters that are in completely different places of the world to start. Like they have no idea about each other at all, and then they all end up coming together. I will say that this book was a little bit more jarring than Priory because the prologue in this book, you're following like the parents, and then once you get into part one, you're following all of their children. So it was important to see who these people were in relation to their parents and like what their parents were doing before coming into these characters. So that was a little bit crazy because you're reading the prologue, you're learning these people, you're like, okay, perfect, I know who these people are. And then part one starts and you're like, who is this character? I'm starting to get more like comfortable with where I am with this book. I did want to pull our next book from the TBR jar though, so that way if I want something that I just don't have to think as hard about, I have that option, because the audiobook definitely saved me with this one. We're just gonna leave it at that. It's not that I am not enjoying it, it's just that this book requires full brain power, at least to get through the first like 20%, I would say, and I am at the 7% mark-ish. So we have a ways to go with this one before we're smooth sailing. We're praying for an easy one. We're also praying that I have, if it's a library book, that I have it already. Okay, we'll do this one. Ooh, this is crazy. This is a book I was actually thinking about early today, and I was like, I'm really hoping that I pull this soon. We got Psalm for the Wild Built, and this is a sci-fi novella. Is it sci-fi? Hold please. It is by Becky Chambers. It's on Kindle Unlimited. It's 160 pages and it is science fiction. It's LGBT/queer, but it's also cozy. I've heard really incredible things. I've also heard that this book is like, it's feel good, but it's also provocative in its questions that it's asking. I think we follow a main character that's like not human, and they're asking like really thought-provoking questions about the world and trying to understand the world around them, which is interesting because that's similar to The Girl with All the Gifts, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed that book so much. Hello besties, this is the final check-in of the vlog because today is Sunday, currently on reading sprints with y'all for Battle-a-thon. And I finished A Psalm of the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. And then I have like a little bit more of a reading update for Day of Fallen Night. We're on page about 150. A Psalm for the Wild Built, I was going to do a check-in at the halfway point, but then I was like, this book is only 130-ish pages, so I'm just going to finish it. I started it yesterday when we were at the pool. I finished it yesterday, like before bed. I did like it. I would say if you like a very cozy, slow-paced book, think of like a Legends and Lattes. I think that these two books are very much in the same vein. But I think what didn't work for me, because it was so short, we didn't get a lot of time with the characters. I didn't find the characters like overly endearing. Actually, I didn't find them endearing at all. I wasn't really connected to the characters. And then even though it was very vibes, like this book was all vibes of this kind of dystopian world, basically humans with their manufacturing tendencies took up a lot of space, like took over the whole world. They built robots to help them with their manufacturing industrial pursuits. And then the robots became sentient and said, we don't want to do this work for you anymore. We actually want to go off and like experience the world on our own. They like have this deal, and the robots, like centuries ago at this point when we meet our main character, sibling Dex, the robots have gone off and they kind of live separately from humans. There's this whole area of wilderness where humans are not allowed to go, and that is the robot land, where robots just observe the natural world. They kind of live amongst the animals and above nature and just observe things. Then we meet sibling Dex, who is a monk, but they're going through, I want to say a midlife crisis, but they're 29, which is relatable. And they're just questioning, is this what I really want to do with my life? Like, I'm very happy, I'm very content with what I'm doing, I'm very privileged, I feel very grateful for everything that I have. I live in a lot of comfort, but I constantly find myself asking, like, why isn't this enough for me? And so they want to go on a journey into the wilderness, kind of get away from humanity and just explore and be able to have room to continue questioning and like chasing those answers. However, sibling Dex runs into a robot called Mosscap, and then they decide to go on this journey together and like learn from each other. So it sounds like a very endearing story. I'm a little bit disappointed that it didn't work for me because this sounded like something that was right up my alley. It seemed like the entire story was guiding us to get to the point where it was trying to deliver a very specific message. It just felt like we meandered our way along until we got to that final chapter, and then it was like pages of monologues from Mosscap and pages of monologues from sibling Dex actually like analyzing and processing, and they weren't doing any analyzing or processing up until that point. And so it just felt very like, here's your final message in the last chapter, goodbye. I gave it like technically a 3.5 stars. I am gonna round it up to a 4-star for Battle-a-thon because it was definitely, a 3-star for me is good, not great. A 4-star is, it was pretty good and I did enjoy it. It's not that I did enjoy it, but it just like wasn't enough for me. I was expecting a lot more, and for how emotional and like pointed the messaging was at the very last chapter, I had just left feeling like I wish that we had gotten more of this throughout the whole book. But then my final update for Day of Fallen Night, like I said, am on page 148, 49. I'm about to finish a chapter and get to 152 before I'm gonna take a little bit of a break from this. I think I'm gonna leave it the next week and not like touch it at all, and then return the following week and see how I'm feeling with it, because it's not that I'm not enjoying it. It's so well written. The characters are interesting. It just feels like a lot. I'm not in the mood for this right now, so I'm not going to like force myself to continue on with it at a super consistent pace, because otherwise this is a book that could put me in a slump. We're just going to take a little breaky poo before we return to it. And that's why I'm going to end the vlog here, because I think I know what types of books I'm gonna switch to, because I know what I'm in the mood for. But this was a really fun vlog. I loved having my TBR jar pick out my books for me. I think for the most part it did a really good job. We had an unexpected 5-star with The Girl with All the Gifts. So if you've made it this far, please leave a zombie emoji in the comments down below. I will catch you in the comments. I will see you in my next one. Toodles, friends.